Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. Very nice to meet you, and I'm so glad that you joined me here today. So today I'll be actually speaking about quantization of models using TensorFlow's model optimization toolkit. Yeah. So a little bit about me. I know that a little bit of introduction has already been given. So just to like recap on that, I'm currently a graduate student here at National University of Singapore, and I do masters by research, and my research is on applying deep learning techniques to smart grids. And previously, I worked as a deep learning research engineer at Sama Technologies for 2 years. I'm also instructor at Udacity. So for the nano degree program of Intel Edge AI for IoT developers. And for this, I thought the course for choosing the right hardware for the edge. If any of you are taking the course and would like to reach out to me, feel free to do so. And so, what exactly will you be learning today? Firstly, I'll go a little bit into edge computing. I'll talk about the need for quantization from this. Then I'll talk about how exactly does in-date quantization work, and then go into explaining quantization in maybe simple words. And lastly, I'll also talk about the TensorFlow model optimization toolkit. Now, this actually has components of post-training quantization techniques. It has quantization aware training. So all of this together, one thing that we have to realize is that this field has a lot of potential. And something like quantization aware training, the newer part of the package, came out like last month. So it has a huge potential for improvement, and has a huge potential to actually make an impact. So do stay tuned and listen. Maybe if it might interest you, you might end up actually doing something on it. So, edge computing. Now, coming into what exactly edge computing is. So, there's an increase in IoT device all around you, taking right from your smart, washing machines to your smart TVs to your mobile phones to your transportations. Everything is going smart. And what is happening is that you wouldn't necessarily want these devices to be talking to a cloud or a server all the time. You would want these edge devices to have their own data centers. This computing, which involves the edge devices data center, is actually called edge computing. And the various applications of it. Firstly, we have stuff like security cameras. Imagine you have a security camera installed right outside your home, and it's sort of checking uh, you know, the people who are passing back and like sort of passing in front of it, and you're finding out if some one of them is a burglar. Would you want information which is quite private of people's faces to be going to the server all the time? Probably not. You would like to keep it private and secure right at the edge. So, this is something that is offered by edge computing. Another very interesting application is self driving cars. So, imagine you have a self driving car passing through a tunnel and it suddenly has to apply brakes. Now, within that few seconds or millisecond, would you really want the self-driving car to do its computation for pressing the brakes and sending it to a server very far away? I mean, that very second could be a case of life and death. So, hence, we need edge computing for devices and also for use cases like this. So, what are the advantages of edge computing now that I've talked about the use case? Firstly, is the reduced latency, as seen by the self driving car case. Then we have reduced internet bandwidth. Imagine you have a edge device kept in a forest somewhere. You do not need internet connection for it to run models. You could have it completely independent of the internet. And then there is increased security, as seen by the case of the smart camera. You have all your computations and all your information extraction done right at the edge. That helps in security. And lastly, taking all of this together, your reduction in dependence of cloud services actually decreases. So this comes towards the need for quantization. Now, if we take our neural networks, there are several power constraints with neural networks. So traditionally, neural networks were built to actually, perform a massive amount of computational power. This included CPU or GPUs. So CPU or GPUs ideally take about 140 to 150 watts of TDP, which is the thermal design power. Whereas if you take a small device like Raspberry Pi, that might only take 1.5 watts.
and composed of floating point values. So this is one of the very important aspects. Neural networks were traditionally trained to preserve accuracy and speed. And to do so, the only way to do that was to have floating point values such that you could do proper MAC operations. And this is something very important to quantization because this is exactly what we are trying to target. Then you have memory constraints. So most laptops or your PCs come at least with 4 GB of RAM, whereas Raspberry Pi only comes with 1 GB of RAM. So you have to make sure you have a model such that it can run on such memory constraints. At the end, you want inference efficiency. What I mean by that is we need a model that takes much less time to do inference than our normal models. This brings us to the actual definition of quantization. So the definition of quantization is actually picked up from mathematics and signal processing. What it states is the fact that it's a mapping of input values to a large set of output values in a smaller set with a finite number of elements. Don't worry, the definition gets better for edge computing. In edge computing, it's basically the process of reducing your floating point 32-bit values to lower precision values like int8 while preserving the information in the neural networks. And I think this is a very important aspect because you want to make sure that you have, even while you're getting your model, reducing the model size, you want to make sure that it has all the information preserved. So how exactly do you go about doing that? So, firstly, let us just take a very simple example of how int8 quantization actually works. So, let us take a neural network which has values from minus 10.00 to 30.00. This is a floating point value. Now, to convert it to int8, that is from 14.32 bit to int8, you have to define its max and minimum values. Doing int8 quantization, you will define the minimum value to be 0 and you'll define the maximum to be 255. Why do we do 255 is, if you remember your high school math or college math a bit, 2 to the power 8 is 256. So 0 to 255 values is 256. And all the values are actually scaled in between the range of 0 to 255. So what happens when we actually want to represent the value 10.00? So this is a little bit of math, but trust me, it's all linear algebra. And it'll be quite quick. So firstly, we define the old range, which is the old maximum minus old minimum. Then we define the new range, which is also new maximum minus new minimum. And then the new value, it's a little tricky, is old value minus old minimum into new range by old range plus new minimum. Don't worry, let us just try it for the value of 10.00. So the old range is equal to 30 minus of minus 10, which is equal to 40. The new range is 255 minus 0, since 255 was our new range maximum value and this is our least value. And the new value is our old value, which is 10 minus our old minimum, which is minus of minus 10, into the new range, which is 255, divided by the old range, which is 40, plus 0, since that is our new minimum. So what is the value we actually get? We get 127.5, which rounds out to be 128. So as you can see in this table right in the middle, 0 then gets mapped to minus 10. 255 gets mapped to 30 because that's our largest value, and 128 gets mapped to 10. So this is how int8 quantization works at its very low level. Now, how exactly, like I know I've told a lot of math, so I just want to wrap up quantization in like really simple words. So taking this from Pete Warden's blog, what he says is, like, for example, if you're going out and all you care about is the fact that whether it's raining or not, you don't care if it's raining heavily or if it's raining just lightly. So this is exactly how it works with neural network predictions. You often don't require floating point calculations of 32-bit or 64-bit or 16-bit precisions. With some amount of effort, you can actually use 8-bit integers to perform neural network inference and still maintain the appropriate level of accuracy. So this is what the TensorFlow model optimization toolkit goes behind. So basically, the TensorFlow model optimization toolkit consists of like tools for quantization aware training, model pruning. So model pruning is another feature, but it's something that I won't be covering. But there are enough resources about model pruning if you want to know. And then there is post-training quantization, which I'll also cover. So what you do is you choose layers that you actually want to quantize in your model. Like for example, you have a very big CNN model. So you choose the layers you want to quantize. You can either quantize all layers or you can quantize some specific layers. What I mean by quantization here is you're converting the huge floating point 32-bit value to a smaller int8 value, lower precision. And then what happens is you're making sure that it contains a mixture of fixed and floating point values. So some of the layers might be mapped to fixed point math, whereas some of the layers might be mapped to floating point math. So believe it or not, the most sensitive ones with higher precision, that is, say 32 or 62-bit, have little or little to no final accuracy loss for the task. Yet, just speeding that, just converting that helps us to speed up the floating point execution. Hence, it's very necessary that we end up converting those values. And one interesting thing about the TensorFlow model optimization toolkit is the hybrid kernels. What the hybrid kernel provides is that it gives you parameters to actually reconvert to higher precision values. And I'll talk about it a bit later, but all you need to know is that even when you sort of convert it to lower precision rate, you need to get it back to floating point values to be actually able to execute inference. Now, like what we discussed right now was, for example, if your weight values are in floating point 32-bit values in the range of, let us say usually in the range of -1 to 1, then your int values are in range of -127 to 127. It could be 0 to 255 as I showed before, but these are unsigned and signed integers, so they are a bit different. But the range can be any. All it does is it has 256 numbers. So basically, you have two types of quantization. One is you have weight quantization, and the second one is that you have weight and activation function quantization. So let us just recap about what we know about neural networks. We have an input, and what we do is, so while training, we have two types of passes. We have one, which is a forward pass, which helps us initialize all the weights and get the output. Now, from the output, we estimate the loss, and then we do a backward pass where we update our weights. Now, similar to that, you also have a forward pass for inference, and this is exactly what TensorFlow's model optimization toolkit targets. So out here we have something called post-training quantization. So post-training quantization, the weights in the forward pass, that is during inference. I mean here, your 32 bits are converted into 8 bits. Now, if your 32-bit values are converted into 8-bit values, the first thing that comes to your mind is, I'm going to lose out on precision. And that isn't right, because you're doing all the calculations inside your neural network on precision values. So if I lose out on precision, won't that affect my neural network? You're absolutely right. So we actually do the calculation and then we upconvert it during inference. But this also leads into some sort of precision problem. You, for example, you have the value 0.234567. This is quite a huge value, but this is just for reference. So if you were to convert this into floating after this conversion, it would end up being 0.235, which would still be floating point values, but would be very different from what you need. So what happens with this is you end up losing out on precision in weights, which actually leads to a drop in accuracy, which you do not want. I mean, as machine learning enthusiasts and machine learning engineers, we constantly work on projects or with clients who would want to get a specific amount of accuracy. And, a drop in accuracy is something that most people can't tolerate. So how do you end up actually running models on the edge while maintaining the level of accuracy? Another thing that post training integer quantization actually gives you is, lately they have gotten into weight and activation of the model. So previously, as I showed, the weight values could be changed, but they have actually gotten into activation values as well. And this is sort of like, it differs from the hybrid operation, since they also focus on weights, and they also take in computation values, and it enables user to take a already trained floating point model and to fully quantize it into 8-bit. So that's something very interesting, because you're able to take an entire model and being able to quantize it to 8-bit. And so what this offers is, if you do remember, I talked about it before, you can choose the layers which needs to be run on a particular, which needs to be quantized. Another advantage of this is that you can choose the layers, or you can choose some parts of the model to be run, which have to be specifically run for floating point to be run on the CPU, while other parts which do not require floating point operations can be run on specialized hardware like the edge TPU. But at the end of the day, you have an accuracy drop, and that is something that you cannot tolerate. So Google came up with quantization aware training. So quantization aware training is mimicking real world quantization at inference. So what it actually does is it enables you to sort of train your model while keeping the performance and size benefits of quantization and retaining as close as possible to the original accuracy. Later on, we'll actually run it. I'll show you a short demo, and we'll see the results. But yeah, I'll show it to you on real time. So what are the problems with quantization that we ideally have? We have the process is that we're going from higher precision value to lower precision value. So it's lossy in nature. And you're rounding off values. So for example, you had values of 0.23456. At the end of the day, it got rounded off to 0.235. And that is sort of, you're introducing errors like rounding errors. And then you also have loss. So there are various types of losses which are introduced. So like you have firstly an information loss. So previously you had more information, but after quantizing now you have information which is coarse in nature. And then you have computational loss. At the end of the day, all neural network is a bunch of mac operations. So when you have loss and you multiply and accumulate it, it's obviously going to increase. So the computational loss also increases. And you have rescaling loss because obviously you're converting it from 32-bit to 8-bit. So these are the types of losses that come up. So what exactly is QAT trying to? What is the core idea behind QAT? So with QAT, you're sort of trying to introduce errors that happen during the quantized inference into the training process, essentially emulating the process, and that actually helps the trainer learn around the error to get an accurate model. So what I mean by that is you're sort of trying to learn the loss from before, and thereby not facing the accuracy drop which you did before. And out here is a short way in which they do it. You take the weights and then you quantize it. The way that you quantize it is make it into 8-bit, and then you up convert it to 32-bit again. Then you run it through a convolution operation and give it a small bias, and then you run it through an activation function of ReLU6. So through this process, you're trying to make sure that your accuracy remains as close to as possible from the actual the actual test accuracy, and that it doesn't drop when you actually reduce the model size. And let us see the results that actually Google got. So MobileNet model actually for floating point value, this is without quantization, you get it as 71.03%. But when you do not do quantization aware training, and you just do post training quantized model, you actually get a drop in accuracy. But after doing quantization aware training, there's actually an increase. So here you can see there's like a 2% drop, and with quantization aware training you're getting almost equivalent and a little more actually. So we decided to sort of run a similar model, and I would like to show the demo for that. So yeah, we ran a similar model for identifying the different types of weeds in plants, and this is a classification problem, and this had like 9 classes, and it was part of TensorFlow dataset. So if you see here, I just have imported it directly from tfds.load. So yeah, so first we ran the model normally, that is without any quantization, just doing normal using Keras. So this is the testing accuracy we got. And then we did quantize aware training. So during this step, what happens is that we are actually making sure all the operations, if you remember the conv operation, like that, we are making sure all the operations are quantized in nature, but the weights aren't. So when that happens, we are actually getting an 89.72 accuracy. Now we go ahead and we actually quantize the weights too. If you want to look at the summary of the previous model, you can do that as well. You can see all the operation are quantized. So I ended up quantizing the entire model. like you can still choose layers you want to quantize, but in here I've quantized the entire model. And then what you do is you run the accuracy for then you run it by via post training quantization. And when you run the quantized aware model, you get an accuracy of 63.22%. Now the same model, without running it through QAT, when I run it through post training quantization, I get the accuracy as 45.23, which is, I get almost a 20% drop, which clearly means that QAT is quite useful because it's able to learn the losses and thus able to sort of retain the accuracy, or at least give a boost in accuracy. And then this is something we tried, where we try to understand the different model sizes. I think this is very important because, as I told you, Raspberry Pi might only end up having 1 GB, and you don't want to consume the entire thing for running your model. You want some part to maybe take up for sensor computation. So how do you end up doing that? So the main model here took up about 12 MB. The normal TF Lite model without quantization took 9.2 MB, and 2.5 MB was taken up by the quantized model. So you can see a drastic decrease in the amount of space that this model might take. And yes, and then you can optimize the model for different different schemes. Firstly, you can optimize it for size. So when you optimize it for size, we get a little bit of an increase in accuracy. Another thing you will notice is when you optimize it for latency. Latency is basically the time it takes. So ideally the time should decrease, but which it did, not by much. So we have 0.48 previously, 0.048, and on this we have around 0.0478. There was a slight decrease in time taken, which is good enough, because if you like try to increase the model, you can see drastic changes too. And yeah, that is it. I know the results are not very promising, but we took up a very new field, and uh, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, even on the model side, and even on the packages such. So I believe that will happen for sure. And what are the different resources to follow? You can actually follow some blogs by Pete Warden on quantization. There are talks by Pete Warden, or TinyML talks, which are really good. And there are TensorFlow blogs on optimization toolkit. I've also linked it here. And so Shaya Paul has actually written a blog on this, which is called A Tale of Quantization. And you also have the TensorFlow Dev Summit 2020 video, which actually talks about QAT. And if you're someone who loves to learn from videos, this is like the ideal resource for you. And this brings me to the end of my talk. I hope you enjoyed it. And I would love to have your feedback. I know this is sort of a new area, so if I have to give a talk about this again or improve it, I would love to have your feedback on how to do that. So this is a small QR code that you can fill in order to give your feedback. And at the end of the feedback form, you'll get all the resources that I have stated and the link to my slides. And the responses will be completely anonymous. You don't have to worry. And I also want to give it a shout out or a thanks to Soham. So Soham really helped me in making those notebooks because I was facing a lot of errors, and thank you for helping me. And yeah, stay at home, stay safe, and please do take care of your mental health. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Ashana, for sharing with us in regards to your insights today. Can I request that you go back to your last slide, so for the QR code? So I think I think around this time, let's so for the audience as well, if you have any question or if you want to also scan that QR code, see the content, I think now would be a best time to do so. And yeah, if there's any questions, please ask them in the chat.